Welcome, everyone, to the latest and greatest episode of Pirate Vibes on Big East Energy Network. Pat, we're here. We finally made it. We finally made it to the regular season. I got you up early on a Sunday morning to create a podcast for the women's. We're getting locked in. You're going to be there this week. How are you, man? It's finally here. It's like Christmas Eve.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you're sort of previewing it and sort of watching other stuff as in October, you're sort of in it to a certain extent already, even though nobody has an official win yet, because of the practices, because of the exhibitions, because of the media day stuff. I mean, it's sort of like the warm up to when, things actually start to count.
Yeah, you talk about warm up. Obviously, the women's is the women's edition that will come out every Tuesday. A 50-point win. How much do we take stock into that? What do we take? I know we talked about scrimmages before on all the shows on the Big East Energy Network, and how much like Georgetown fans are celebrating the big win over Kentucky like they won a championship, right? Like, and meanwhile, other schools got the private like Shaw. Bozzella had a scrimmage against a D2, right, from Philadelphia Jefferson, and had a 50-point win. What do we take away from that?
I'm more interested in who Bozzella is trusting to get minutes. And that's probably going to change, because one thing which is interesting about Seton Hall's schedule is after Tuesday when he plays St. Peter's, he gets 10 days off, plays 3 games in 7 days on 2 coasts because he takes the 2 West Coast games in the middle of November, then plays Fordham when he gets back from California. And then he gets another, I think it's 12 days before they play Princeton. So, they're going to play 4 games in the first month of the season. So what you see Tuesday night and what you see, in November might look a lot different than what you see when they really get the ball rolling with the Columbia game in December, or the Princeton game. My mistake.
Yeah. So the starting lineup was Eads, Catalon, Codio, Pickney, and Hunter. The 5 girls that went to Madison Square Garden for media day. No surprises there, right?
No. That was in fact when he sort of announced that he sort of tipped that off at the media day event 2 weeks ago. So that's not a surprise. They're all veterans. We've talked ad nauseum over the past week and a half about how much impact, how much importance he's putting on Codio this season. And obviously he's going with women that he knows and women that he trusts, as opposed to going to, let's say, the younger players or some of the newer players on this roster to fill the starting positions, at least for now.
Yeah, for the starting positions, I think he's going with veteran. Zahara Bishop was the first woman off the bench in the scrimmage. I know Mariana Valenzuela was not available. Was there anyone that surprised you? I know you really couldn't watch it. You had to listen to it. Was there anyone looking at the box score? Obviously, Codio with 25 points in 19 minutes. The one thing I wouldn't Messiah Hunter. I think Messiah Hunter is going to be the one where you can gauge how good of a night they had, because I think you can count on Jada Eads and you can count on, Cattle Hunt, but can Messiah Hunter give them that post presence night in, night out? I think we're okay with the guards, right? And Cudio's probably looking like a 4, kind of a 3, right? So
right.
It's got to be that post presence.
She's probably playing more of the power forward. I'm curious to see how much she intends on, or how much Bozzella intends on having her play inside. Because obviously she showed off a pretty decent jump shot. Showed up 4 for 4 from 3. So she's got outside range, and Bozzella wants to play something close to 5 out. So when you have that, obviously everyone on the court has to be able to shoot when you're playing that type of offensive structure. So then the question becomes, and that's probably the question that Bozzella is going to have to answer over the next month while he's playing some of these lesser opponents, is that who is he going to be able to trust to defend a tough player on the inside, and who's going to get rebounds? Obviously when you play, coaches are all going to say everyone's got a rebound, but the reality of the system is that you need taller girls if possible, or to be able to rebound. And who on this team do you look at and you say, okay, this is the one? I mean, Hunter obviously is playing the center in the starting lineup. So, by default, you're going to hope that she can clean up, at least on the defensive, keep opponents to, one shot on their offensive possessions. So she's obviously somebody, but of course, Bozzella is probably going to emphasize everyone rebounds on the defensive end, and then after somebody gets a ball, then you let Eads and Catalan and Cudio run on the outside and get your transition points that way.
Yeah, definitely. Any comments about the all these Big East preseason backcourt? And any comments from their performance against Jefferson? Because I know I've read some things in like Facebook groups and everything. Like, are they ready for the next? And it's Jefferson, man. Like, it's Jefferson. I think it's a lot of time management, and they're wanting the women to do certain things. It's not just playing basketball, but reading too much into it.
I don't think you can sort of judge where.
I agree.
You're not going to. First of all, you shouldn't need all Big East level performances to beat St. Peter, San Francisco, Pacific, and Fordham. You shouldn't need that. Yep. I think what you're hoping out of those 4 games is that, and one of the problems that may come up when you get to Princeton and then Butler the first week of December is, whereas other teams are going to be playing, once or twice a week, and will probably have 6 or 7 games played by the time you get to that first week of December, Seton Hall is going to have 4. So, you break for a week and a half, you play a couple of games, you break for a week and a half. Do you get the rhythm and do you get the momentum? Because, again, as we sort of talked about a few weeks ago, Princeton's gonna be a tougher game than Butler. And this is no slight, Austin Parkinson's got a decent team at Butler, but Princeton is a perennial top 25 team. They're still, I think they cracked the top 25. A great coach in Carla Karubi. I just got her name wrong, so I'm, she's Princeton's coached by a Gino Auriemma protege. They're obviously, I haven't studied their team closely enough. We'll do that when we get closer to that Princeton game. But, you look at that one, and that game on December 2nd glares in bright lights, because that is the type of team that you need to beat. They're going to be probably even better than, at least on paper, better than Marquette and Villanova, who I think are the 2 third and fourth place, contenders, and the 3 teams who might be battling out for 1 or 2 NCAA tournament slots.
Fair enough. All right, Pat. So you've been following this team for quite a while. Grade this roster in terms of the depth and excitement going into this season, because it's not a typical Seton Hall Pirate roster, I would say, right? It's a little bit deeper than normal. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I think to give Tony Bozzella credit, sometimes, I mean, particularly in the NIL transfer portal era, and we might laugh at this, but it hurts women's teams in the Big East and Seton Hall more than it hurts men's teams, because then you take at least on the men's side, you have a shot to get a couple of decent players, because the depth of talent in the men's game is better. There's more good players than on the women's side. Yeah, more that should be that are let's say power conference players. So either you go in the portal and you get players you think might be there, or you just recruit a bunch of freshmen. Whereas what Bozzella has been able to do this year is get, when you look at Cudio and you look at Valenzuela, and Cam Rust, who we haven't mentioned, you get 3 players who have credentials to be power conference players. And then you get the guards who he's brought in, Hall Rosa, Woodward, and Bishop, who have the talent to be Big East caliber players. So on top of the 5 that you've got, that you hope you have in your starting lineup, you've got 6 other players, at least on this roster, who you can probably bring in for a few minutes if you need to in Big East games, and hopefully not see a drop off. Whereas, one of the issues that Bozzella has had, particularly recently, and injuries hurt as well, is that when, like for example, when Catalan goes down last season, there wasn't a lot there to pick up the slack. Whereas this year, God forbid, Eads or Catalan or even Cudio go down, you can plug in a Woodward, you can plug in a Bishop, and you probably be able to offset some of that scoring.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Pat, when we come back, we'll talk about St. Peter's and how the season looks right here on the Big East Energy Network. This is Power Vibe. Welcome back to the Big East Energy Network. Power Vibes, the home for Seton Hall basketball. Pat, we're looking at St. Peter's on the men's side and the women's side. On this women's side, what do you expect to see from them? Obviously, they just lost a big piece. She transferred to A&M, right? I'm pretty sure you said that.
Yeah,
I think she went to A&M. They're not bringing back a ton of scoring. I know that for media day they brought their point guard, and their point guard averaged 4 points per game last year. They don't return a double-digit scoring. Is there anything that we should fear from St. Peter's?
Seton Hall is going to be ready. I don't think there's any question about that. I think, given what I saw a couple of weeks ago, they looked like they were ready 2 weeks ago. So it's sort of because, again, you've been since school started, at least, if not before that. You've all, again, it's stuff that players talk about, which is that you've been playing each other in practice for the last 2 months. Now you get to a spot where you get to play somebody else. So this is more watching about what goes well and doesn't go well on Seton Hall's side of things. What is, one thing which is troubling in this box score is the fact that Seton Hall only won the rebounding battle by 5 against, again, a Division II opponent who you should have considerably more talent and athleticism against. So what you want to look for, particularly in these games, is how the team addresses what's something that you better have in order when you're playing the best teams in the Big East. When you're playing Marquette, we're not going to mention Connecticut. Let's leave the Connecticut stuff on the side for a second. When you're playing Marquette, when you're playing Villanova, when you're playing Georgetown, when you're playing Butler, you need to be able to get to not have a team destroy you with second chance points. So we'll see. I want to see how they contain, how you contain a St. Peter's team that is not, on the one hand, in your league talent-wise, but on the other hand, look, you can't. If St. Peter's, this is probably, I don't know what St. Peter's schedule is, but this is probably one of the better teams that St. Peter's is playing. It's their opening night. They're going to want to put up some type of effort, and so on and so forth. So, let's see what happens let's see if Seton Hall can aggressively figure out how to rebound on Tuesday.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that goes back to the Cam Russ, the Messiah Hunters, contribute, and Savannah Jones. She had 6 rebounds against Jefferson, being able to box out consistently and be able to get the ball and push it up to the court for the guards. One player that you're anticipating, you're going to be there, right, on Tuesday night?
Yeah. Yes.
One player that you're anticipating to see out there on the court. I know you saw a lot of them 2 weeks ago. I think you saw all of them, right?
I think everyone played.
The entire roster?
Yes.
one that you're anticipating to see, because I'm the inner squad scrimmage that you saw. Catalan and Eads were on the opposite teams, right? Like
That
you didn't see a team. What is there a certain player that you're looking forward to seeing working with another player? I know it's early
I
on.
am interested in Cam Rust, if
Okay.
mainly because her name seems to pop up in a lot of conversations that Bozzella has. And it's when I was there, she sort of she was sort of playing in the background, really didn't do much. Again, when you're splitting the team up and you're conceivably saying, oh, the best player, the fourth best, when you're sort of doing 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 and 3 and 1 and 4 on different teams, you would think that someone of Russ's pedigree and someone of her caliber coming out of high school would be more of a presence in a setting. It's not like she's the leader of, let's say, the backups, but you expect to see more of her emerge. And let's see what happens on Tuesday night, because I think what Bozzella's ideally would like to do is play his starters, let's say, like they did on Thursday, about 20 minutes each. So then when he puts out a second team or puts out a semblance of a second team, obviously Rust is going to be front and center in a group like that. She will probably be the best. She'll be the most experienced and best player, considering, because Valenzuela's likely to be unable to play on Tuesday. So Rust, it's an opportunity for Rust to step up and sort of be the leader of the second unit and/or a quality backup for when he wants to give Hunter and Cudio a blow.
Yeah. One thing that I'm looking forward to, you talk about Russ, is her reuniting with Hall Rosa in an actual game, because they were AAU teammates and played a lot of basketball coming from Massachusetts. So you see that connection. Same thing with Kraft and Bishop. See what they do out there, because they played AAU and traveled ball. It seems like there's a lot of cohesiveness on the outside of the top 5, which is something that I'm looking forward to see grow. And you can't see that in a scrimmage against Jefferson when you're up by 50, and you can't see that in a scrimmage when it's an inter squad scrimmage. So
although the 4 players you mentioned, I believe, were all playing on the B squad or the blue squad last Saturday. So actually, I think he had Kraft on the white squad. I'm gonna get that, but at least I remember that. No, Russ was on the white squad. He didn't have him playing together. Maybe forget that I said that. But that is an interesting point about our backups, that they know each other. I mean, that's sort of how you recruit these days as well. You get one player who signs on with you, and then she brings it on to a friend of hers who decides she's going to come along as well. It also plays along with Valenzuela's connection with the guard she played with on the Mexican national team, who's going to be on the squad next season. So, it's just easy. I'm going out for one recruit, I end up getting 2.
Yeah, I'm excited. All right, Pat, let's go on the record. I say Seton Hall finishing second. I think you put in your blog that they finish second, right, in the conference?
Third.
You put them behind Marquette.
Third place.
Okay, behind Marquette though.
I have Marquette.
Yeah,
I have Marquette as second, because Marquette's bringing back their entire starting lineup. They came in 4th. Again, it's interesting, and I actually mentioned this to Kara Casanegua, who is the coach at Marquette, that one of the things that I found interesting was, we were talking about in the context of the quality of the Big East, is that each team won on the other team's home court last season. We won up at the Al McGuire Center in Milwaukee. They won at Walsh and South Orange. So, they are, if you want to say that they're sort of on equal footing, I think a lot of people would perceive that they want to see what comes in to replace Faith Mazonis before they're entirely signed on to where Seton Hall is, whereas Marquette is what you see is what you get. And, one of the things to say about Marquette is that, and this is something which is going to be important, particularly when we get to January, is, they didn't make the NCAA tournament last year either. and they only came couple of wins short of getting to that goal. So this is something where they're going to Castanegro, I think, has a determination as a coach to be one of those who gets to the tournament every year. That's sort of that's sort of where I'm in the Big East. I'm in what I think is a power conference, and schools on the top end of a power conference should be making NCAA tournaments every year. So Marquette's going to be a tough out. Villanova is going to be a tough out.
Yeah.
Not only do you have Jasmine Bosco, who is also on the Big East first team, but Denise Dillon loves some of the transfers she brought in. She thinks she can go bigger. She thinks she's got her rebounding issue straightened out. She thinks that was a weakness with Villanova last season. So, and we happened to draw Villanova right before Christmas. I think that game is down at the Finneran Pavilion. So, that's going to be a very important pre-Christmas test in conference play against another team that thinks they have on their roster NCAA level talent.
What do you think about Creighton while we're going down this rabbit hole? Do you think Creighton falls back quite a bit? Because he's a great coach.
I don't think. Yes, Jim Flannery. Flannery has recruited well.
Yeah.
He likes a couple of returning players. Of course, the problem is you can't lose that core that he had, and no, he can expect what he wants to expect. And a lot of people have said, and they're probably not wrong, that he's got more talent on that roster. But freshmen are going to freshmen. Particularly, it'd be one thing if you didn't have teams of the caliber of Marquette, Seton Hall, and Villanova poised to be 2, 3, and 4 in this conference. If nobody else was getting, if this was a situation where Connecticut's going to Connecticut until Gino leaves, and probably even after he leaves, they'll be a top 10 team in the country, no question about it. Yeah. But if nobody else in the conference was keeping up, like if this was sort of like if you look on the men's side, you look at Gonzaga and St. Mary's, where Gonzaga is the best, St. Mary's is second, and then nobody else ever gets better in the West Coast Conference. Then you'd say, all right, you know what, this has the talent of a second place team in the Big East. But when you're looking at how everyone else in the Big East has kept what they had, the gap between Creighton and Marquette and Villanova wasn't that wide last season. I'm trying to think, even if they lost to one, they didn't lose to Seton Hall, but I think they lost to one or two of the other two of that group. So the gap between Creighton wasn't great enough. So if they sort of fall back because they lost their 3 leading scorers, it's no slight on Creighton. They give him all the credit in the world for, Flannery, again, is a program builder, knows what he's doing, and every other accolade that he deserves.
Creighton actually went 16-2 last year, so they did not lose to anyone else outside of UConn.
Okay.
I know there are close games outside of the Seton Hall stuff. Like they played a lot of close games with those schools that you mentioned. So
right. So they lose if they're 5 or 10 points worse than they were last year. Those are going to be losses.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Pat. Finally, tournament team, yes or no? I don't know if you saw on social media, but a lot of posts. I'm just retweeting the Seton Hall actual official, and I just keep writing just tournament team. You put the post out of Tony Bozzella at the train station before Madison Square Garden. I just retweeted tournament team. Is this a tournament team?
It should be.
It should be.
Again, he's got more talent than he had last season. He's got Eads and Catalan, who are a year better than last year, and hopefully totally healthy. We don't have stretches where we don't, because unfortunately the stretch where Eads was hurt was the worst time in the schedule for that to happen heading into the Big East tournament, which is why that game against that semifinal game against Creighton, at the Big East tournament was not Seton Hall's best. And really what you're hoping is that all the Pistons. All the Pistons are driving when you need them to. Make sure everyone is healthy and ready to go when you get to that Big East schedule, because one other thing to point out is, after you get past that group of Marquette, Seton Hall, and Villanova, the drop off to a group that includes St. John's, Butler, Creighton, and Georgetown is not a particularly deep drop. If you don't bring it for those games against those opponents, and I'll include Providence is also going to be pretty good. I think DePaul might surprise some people. So, basically night in and night out, and this is sort of the mantra of the Big East, there are no easy outs. You might think that, but there are no easy outs. You cannot sleepwalk, because DePaul is an example. If you don't bring it against DePaul, they have a player named Katie Clark, who nobody mentions. Didn't make all Big East, but Katie Clark can drop 30 on you, and you leave DePaul with a loss. That's probably not going to look that good in front of the selection committee.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Pat. We'll have fun the next 2 nights covering the teams, and we look forward to your feedback, and especially the men and the women's episodes coming in future episodes. Are you there, Pat? Are you there?
Okay.
Can you hear me, Pat?
It's gonna be exciting. Hopefully, it's gonna be exciting, and hopefully, the women come through looking as good as we think they're going to, and then, we'll see where they're at. We'll take the temperature of the team in a month before they head into those. Yeah, because you got not only have the matchups with Princeton, Butler's a Big East team, and again, a team that if you're not paying attention, they could sneak up on you. Then you play NC State, who's in the
Columbia,
rankings,
yeah.
And then you got a Columbia team that is sneaky good. And then I don't know what to think of all of it, but we know what Princeton and Columbia and NC State are going to bring to the table in the first 10 days of December. So that's sort of when you sort of have to get some wins that make the NCAA committee take notice of you because that was the one thing that, Bozzella, the resume of Seton Hall was bereft of last season, which was the type of win which made the NCAA committee stand up and take notice. It's like, okay, you got 23 wins. Good for you. Who'd you beat? And the answer was, besides Marquette and Villanova, nobody.
Yeah. I got you. All right, Pat. We'll do it again next week. This is the home for women's basketball for the Seton Hall Pirates on the Big East Energy Network. Stay true, stay blue, and 5 on.
Ahoy there! Ahoy, me heart!